So, a question from a reader: how is personal branding either the same as or different from creating being? And creating being is the reference to a concept that lives inside of our work of creating. It's essentially the creation of your identity, your worldview, your habits of behavior, the sum total of all those things that make up the expression of you as a human, that make you not just human, but human being. Okay, so creating being, which is the work that we do with people, create who they are, who they be in the world, such that they can take the actions at the level of efficacy required to create them the results that they want. Um, how is that the same as and or different from personal branding? Well, in a lot of ways, it's the same, right? Because a brand is, especially a personal brand, is a description of what this thing is. This person, this previously a company, but this person, what are they about? What do they value? What are their priorities? So certainly in that sense, it's the same. And if it's a great personal brand, meaning, I guess what I mean by that is if it's a personal brand that's taken from um, the depth of who a person actually is and what they genuinely value, rather than just like some stock off the shelf stuff or some things that but potentially resonate with an audience or that might look good, then it can be even closer to creating being because it's like a really personal and deep process to bring out a personal brand from someone's deep insides, their own personal journey, right? Telling the story of your life that has cultivated your way of seeing the world. It also tells a story that bring other people into your world. That's like you could call it authentic branding. You could say personal branding. So there's a lot of overlap. Um, but how would I distinguish personal branding from creating being? Interesting question, that one, because I actually had a client who was a branding or is a branding superstar. I mean, he's worked with some of the top brands in the world. And I helped him to learn to create his being, to create who he is. And that was, for him, deeper work than branding. Of course, it added to his branding understanding. And then at the end of our coaching work, it was about a year and a half, I hired him to help me with my personal branding. And so we both had the experience of helping each other with the things that we have mastery in, me creating being, him personal branding, lots of overlap and some level of distinction. And one of the places of distinction that I think are most important and relevant is the way that he thinks about where his attention is when he's creating personal brand is, will this resonate with the audience? Will this capture the attention? Will this sing within the context of the song in the world that's already being sung? More specifically, what's hip right now? What colors are hip? What fonts? What um, what kind of texture? What kind of vibe are people paying attention to right now? And when you're creating your being, you're not putting that much attention on um, what's going to how is it going to be received. The attention is more heavily weighted towards what is there and alive and quote unquote true within me in this moment, and what is the best word that I have to bring that out. What word is the best signpost that points inwardly for me, that activates that not as an I concept but as a lived experience, right? The cultivation of being, it's like inward personal branding. There might be a way of talking to myself that activates a loving nature, a sense of power, that might not be the kind of words that land out there in the world. Good inward marketing, bad outward marketing. And so, you know, um, I think the biggest difference between personal branding and the creation of the conscious cultivation and creation of being is the orientation. Like, who are you thinking about this being heard by and having an impact on primarily? Primarily, of course, personal branding can also be something that informs you, but the primary purpose of a personal brand is to land with an audience. And the creation of being, of course, the way that you speak to yourself about yourself that activates a certain way of being, it may land with an audience out there, but primarily the purpose of it is, what do those words do to you? What do they activate in you? So that difference in orientation will often yield different results. You're going to get different language when you have one primary purpose versus the other. Just like in fitness, if you want to be strong, if you want to be healthy and strong and have high endurance, like you can't have the most of all of them. You can either be really strong or have really good endurance. You can't have the ultimate in both. You have to pick a direction that's primary, and the other thing can come along, but it has to remain secondary. And so, of course, those do them both, right? You can create a personal brand and you can create your being, and they can have differences and they can have overlaps, and they can both serve their own function in a really powerful way. And on that note, I would point you to the work of the living philosopher H.G. Moeller, Moeller, and he has a concept called profilicity, and he's talked about how that we moved from an age of sincerity into an age of authenticity, and now we're moving into an age of profilicity. These are ways of conceptualizing the self. And the age of profilicity is the conscious cultivation of of self that is projected out into the world like a profile or a personal brand. And it's not just a thing separate from the self. It's not like I am this person, I create my being, this is who I am, and then there's also this personal brand out there, profile, but that's not me. His suggestion is these profiles, these personal brands are an aspect of self, or are the self potentially for some people. That's the only self they've got. And so, in that sense, in that way of thinking about it, you might even see the personal brand that you create, even not as something that promotes a version of yourself, but you could even go so far in Moeller's work and ideas, it's thinking that is who I am. I am that profile, or at least it's an extension of me. So that's something that I've been researching and learning about recently that may be interesting to you. But in any case, there are my thoughts. Thank you for asking. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.